Right, so we'll get started. I want to welcome everybody. My name's Chris Knight. I'm the communications director here at North Country Community College, and it's my, honor, privilege, pleasure to welcome you all to North Country Live. So, for those of you that might be new to the program, I'll just talk for a quick second about North Country Live before I introduce our panelists tonight, and then have a great conversation about pottery. We're really looking forward to this. So North Country Live is a program that the college launched almost a year and a half ago now, probably longer than that. So right at the outset, or not too long after the outset of the COVID pandemic, we were trying to find a way to continue to reach out to our communities, to stay engaged with people in our communities, and to showcase the college a little bit, but also provide an opportunity, a forum for people to learn about things happening in their own backyard. So since we started, we've done, I want to say about 30 programs now. We've had more than 900 people register for North Country Live, and we've had programs on a range of things. We talked about history earlier. We've had wellness, the environment. We had a birding program I mentioned earlier. And this fall, our series is focused on art and music. So we started that off with a great discussion about growing the arts in your community 2 weeks ago. And then last week, we had a great session on photography. And you can watch all these programs. Most of you may know this by now because you registered for this one by going to our website, which is nccc.edu/live. And that has past editions of the show on it that you can go back and watch and share. And they're also on our YouTube channel as well, too. So I do want to say a quick thank you to the North Country Community College Foundation for sponsoring the program tonight. And the foundation is kind of the philanthropic arm of the college. They raise money for scholarships, for helping to manage our facilities. The foundation owns our two other several other campuses on our buildings on our other campuses, and does a lot of great things that the college itself can't do outright. So I want to thank the foundation for sponsoring the program. So I want to introduce a few folks here right now as we get started. So first, I want to introduce folks that are co-hosting with me from our art department faculty here at North Country. And the first is Tina Lamore. She's the chair of our art department. Hi, Tina.
Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for being here, Tina. And also joining us is Elaine Taylor Wild. She's an assistant professor of art here at North Country. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Chris. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming.
And so then I want to talk now. I want to introduce our guests tonight. Obviously, our program is about pottery. We came up with a really clever name, which was Wheeling and Dealing with Clay. I can't say who that was that came up with that, but I think it's kind of right. We're talking about wheeling, right? We're talking about, in some cases, dealing. And it's just an opportunity for some folks that are amazing in pottery to sort of showcase themselves, and also just talk about pottery in general and what it is that you kind of get out of it, and what, why so many people have grown to appreciate it and enjoy it, both as an art and for many of you also as a business too. So first I want to introduce Andrea Hill, who's joining us here from Saranac Lake. Hi, Andrea.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hi. Also, Peter Shrope is with us over in Paul Smith's, right, Peter?
Rainbow Lake.
Rainbow Lake, excellent.
Rainbow Lake.
Thank you for being with us. And then Greg Rudd is with us. He's down in Inlet. Hi, Greg. Are you in Inlet? Am I right?
Yes, I am. Yeah, the booming metropolis.
We're spanning the park tonight. So let me just, I'll go in that order and ask you all initially this first question. It's sort of a simple one, but I think we all want to know a little bit more about your background in pottery, how, it started for you. Is it something that just has come in recent years, or does it go back a long way? So Andrea, let me throw that at you first. Tell us a little bit about how you got started.
I don't think I realized it at the time, but when I was growing up, there was a clay bank near my house, and I loved to spend my days just pulling clay out of the clay bank and making little things out of it, and processing the clay to pull all the sticks and pine needles out of it and making it as purified as possible. And when I look back now, I think it really started then. So, pretty early in childhood that I was obsessed with the tactile nature of the clay. I was an artsy kid in high school, though we didn't have any ceramics there. And then I started college at Hudson Valley Community College, so another community college a little south of here. And they called it Crafts for Credits. So you could take classes at the local art center and get credit for it. So that's where I took some pottery classes. And I remember thinking the first class that I took, I'm like, people can do this for a job. This is amazing. But from there, I went on to transfer to a 4-year school where I majored in painting and kind of moved away from clay. When I was done with college, I got studio space where there just happened to be a ceramic setup, and I just never painted again. I just kept working in clay and eventually started selling it and doing that part-time, and then it became my full-time job.
That's awesome. And do you have your own studio there, obviously, right? Or your, yep.
Right off the kitchen.
Yep. And for people that aren't familiar, and we'll talk a little bit about sort of the business end at some point, but where can people find your stuff?
So since the pandemic, I've been selling pretty much exclusively online. So Etsy.
Etsy. Yep. I think that's going to be kind of a common denominator. I know I've read so much about people using that as an outlet.
Yeah, it's been really good for me.
And Andrea, can you put your Etsy shop link in the chat when you get a minute?
Oh gosh, that sounds advanced.
Where we can find it and paste it in there too.
Yeah. Oh dear, what did I do?
You're still with us, don't worry.
Okay.
While you're doing that, let me chat with Peter a little bit and ask the same thing. Peter, tell us a little bit about your background in pottery, when you got into it, and what it's been like having this as part of your life over the last number of years.
Well, on many respects, pottery has been my life. My grandfather was an engineer. My father was an engineer. And by golly, I was going to be an engineer. And so in my my first semester of my sophomore year in college, I had to take an elective. And I said, oh, I'll take pottery. That'll be easy. And now, for some 40 some odd years later, that one pottery class completely changed my life. And since then, I've gone to earn a Master of Fine Arts degree in sculpture. I have a 20-year career in museum exhibit design as well. I must share, and everybody knows, Andrea, I'm sure you know, it's really difficult to make a living as a potter, no matter how hard you try. So I've been doing it for a long time, and it's one of those things that this is probably more of a philosophical question. I don't know if it chose me or I chose it. It did. That one class, like I said, changed my life.
Wow, that's wonderful. And what part of your life is it these days? How much of a part of your life is it?
I'm 30%. I'm still an active potter. I have 3 kilns. I'm also, as you mentioned, involved in the town of Brighton government. I do exhibit design work on a contract basis from time to time, but I'm in my studio 25 to 30% of the time, all year long. Yeah.
That's great. Excellent. I want to learn some more about that as we go forward. But Greg,
Sure.
Greg is relocated.
I came downstairs. Actually, I'm in my studio right now. I came downstairs because it's quieter.
Great. So Greg, tell us same thing. Tell us a little bit about your background in pottery. How did you get started, and how did it become an interest, a passion for you?
I started, I'll give you a real brief biography. I grew up here in Inlet. My grandfather came up here in the early 20s, so my family is pretty much born and bred in the Adirondacks, but I went to high school at Town of Webb. The art teacher I had at Town of Webb was a phenomenal man. His name was Al Strip, and he really kind of took me under his wing in junior high and started kind of coaxing me along really into the arts. My family, my mom and my dad both really, they really backed me with it. Consequently, I went to college to be an art teacher. And when at that time, through SUNY Potsdam, you did all your art courses at Potsdam and your education courses through St. Lawrence. And I ended up, I figured I was going to be an art teacher. I take a little bit of everything. And when I got the pottery class, it's been downhill ever since. It's just one of those. It's because when it bites hard. That's all I could say. I find that if I'm not in my studio, for a couple of days, I get squirrely. I really do. I got to, I'm like, I got to get downstairs and make something. I got to, even if it's just coffee mugs, I got to do something. And I've been doing pottery. I say full time. When I say full time, I started hardcore probably. Oh, jeepers, how old am I? I would say 35 years, 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I got to the point about 25, 30 years ago where I was sharing studio space at Pratt down in Utica. I was teaching in Rome at the time. And, you do adult courses. I didn't want to bite the bullet and have my own studio and, I have to spend the money for a kiln and all the equipment. But looking back on it, it's, and I tell people this all the time, and my fellow potters can attest to this. You could set up a really nice studio for $5,000. You have a nice kiln, you have a wheel, have a slab roller or extruder. And then the problem is, then you just keep buying more and more stuff. But and anyway, so I've been doing it for, and doing craft shows. My wife does jams and jellies, and I would do the pottery, and we were a nice play off of each other doing that. She was a business teacher, and I was an art teacher, so we couldn't get two more diametrically opposed people as far as that goes. But we would do upwards of 20 shows a year plus teaching, and 4 years ago we moved back to Inlet full time. Set up my studio here. We have a shop here, and we cut our show list drastically because we just said, it's as busy as I need to be and as busy as I want to be, So, and it's been a passion, I'll say, and it's been a bug too, So.
Would you say that art teacher was your inspiration? That was kind of like the starting point for you?
Absolutely, yeah. And consequently, I always said that to kids that when I taught high school that really wanted to get into the arts, I would say, I'll give you some advice. I said, I'm not saying you can't make a living at art, but if you become an art teacher, and then now you got something you can do, and you don't think about benefits and things like that, but now you've got a career path and you can do your art too. So, yeah, but I mean, I've had a lot of very talented students over the years that, a few of them come to mind that are just more talent in their pinky than I'll ever have, but super kids that have gone on into the arts on their own. So, which is good. It's fun to see that.
That's great. I want to ask Andrea kind of the same question too. I mean, you mentioned school. You've all talked about, really that's where it started, with a class or with a program. Was there one person for you that sort of inspired you to do, to get into this, Andrea, or was it more something that you kind of found in yourself?
Well, I think that it was a lot of people, all of the people who taught me pottery over the years. I had a number of different teachers. I think there was a real defining moment for me when at the end of a pottery class, we would put our finished work up on the table, and I had this one teacher who, he looked over my work and he was just like, well, now you just have to learn how to sell it. And I think that was the moment when I'm like, I hadn't even considered it as a job. I was just doing it for the pleasure of it. And I was like, what? Sell it? Like it had never crossed my mind. And from there, I just did learn how to sell it. So it was, I think that was kind of the moment that the seed was planted that it could be a career and more than just a hobby.
Yeah. Did you have a moment like that, Peter? Can I ask? Or
Yeah, sure. But yes, I think just to pick up on what Andrea said, you work with clay and you do it because you want to, you have to, you need to, you're drawn to it. And when you get to the point where somebody says, you should sell your work, or, hey, how much do you want for that pot? What that helps do is that helps reinforce what you're already drawn to, and that encourages you, and then you can keep going. And it helps feed your drive to keep creating and to experiment with glazes and experiment with form and so on and so forth. Yep.
let's talk a little bit, and Elaine and Tina, Elaine, you want to jump in? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. So I know, Andrea, you have your Etsy shop, and I know that you were selling farmers markets, right? I know you were doing the Saranac Lake one. Did you do others as well?
So initially I did a lot. Before I had kids, I did at one point as many as 4 or 5 markets a week. That was 10 years ago. Now I don't do any markets, so it has changed a lot. I do miss that contact with my customers because now it's all emails and virtual, but that's a lot of us during the pandemic. So yeah, it's pretty much just online now.
Okay. Peter, I know Greg talked about shows. How do you reach your market?
Yeah, well, I have a a website with an online shopping cart and so on and so forth. And yes, since COVID has come around, I've noticed a big uptick in online sales, especially around certain holidays. But these days, I don't do too many of them. And it's hard with ceramics. I don't do outside fairs on grass for lots of reasons, including breakage. So I tend to not necessarily be exclusive, but I do the show at the Adirondack Experience in July, and the Anchor Wholesale Show, which has been down in Saratoga. And in the past, I've gone down to the Baltimore show for the American Crafts Council. But yeah, with my with my schedule, like I said, 25 to 30%. I don't. I'm not in the. I don't have to go out and do lots of shows, and but I do have lots of things that I sell a ton of stuff of. So that always keeps me busy.
Greg, what about you? As I imagine pre-pandemic and mid-pandemic are different lives, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said previously, we were doing, upwards of 20 shows a year. I'd go into Virginia, all over New York, went into Vermont, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and I finally said to my wife one day in a moment of madness, I said, draw a circle. I will travel 2 hours in any direction to be back in my own bed at night, you know? And that being said, that really didn't trim down a lot of shows. I was like, wow, I never realized how many shows there are, but and now, well, in the town of Inlaw, I'll just give you this last year, they hired a girl to do social media. She came into my studio and she filmed me working, and she went to the shop, and I cannot tell you how many people said to me, we saw your shop on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. We really wanted to come visit it, and which, I live here, so I'm here all the time, and it's one of the things I found this year, especially. I like one day shows because you're in and you're out. You're 6 hours, you're out the door. But like I do the Long Lake show, Heart of the Park craft show, the Speculator one day show, and then I do a couple shows here in Inlet. And I got to tell you, I said a bunch of us crafters were saying the same thing. I think people are just retired and they want to get out, and it just it died off. But now, like this summer was getting crazy. I got cleaned out at a couple of shows, and I was like, holy jeepers, I got to make more than friggin' coffee mugs. But
That's good. That's a good problem, though.
Well, it is, but it just seems this summer it really went instead of dying off like it did last year. This year it's like with that little glimmer of hope, people came out. So
That's good.
About what is your, and this is a question for all of you, about what I'm assuming that we're talking about sort of production pottery, not like one-off for say an exhibit or something. So about what's your sort of production for a week, or how do you figure for, you just said you got cleaned out. So like, what do you have to do to get ready for a show as far as production goes?
Well, my turnaround time for, let's just say if you came up to me and said, gee, can you make me a dinnerware set? Well, and depending on the weather, because humidity plays havoc on my schedule. But, my usual turnaround time, if you ordered something today, I could probably get it to you in 3 weeks, so, I mean, at one time I was doing shows like September, especially every weekend in September. So consequently, here in March, I'm making Christmas ornaments, but that's what you got to think. You got to think that far ahead. And as far as like my production, I would say poundage wise, I will go through, when I'm really sitting down and working, like during the day, I'll easily go through 300 pounds of clay a day, Now, that being said, I don't do that every day, so let's say I make, say 100 coffee mugs. Well, so I make them, now I've got to trim them, handle them, and go through that whole process,
Put handles on them.
Yeah, exactly. It's a vicious cycle. That's all I read. I read a really good article, and I think it was in Ceramics Monthly years and years and years ago, and it talked about the rhythm of the studio. And when I first read it, I said, "What a crock!" But boy, it's true. Because I mean, we're all probably in the same boat in the sense that we're strapped for space, so you can't put something aside and then keep making and making and making. You got to make it, trim it, handle it, whatever, fire it, get it out the door or into storage or whatever you're going to do with it before you just get inundated with stuff if you. But anyways, I'll shut up now.
Andrea, what about you?
So I probably send out about 100 to 150 orders a week. I have a person who does.
Did you say a week, Andrea? Can you pull your computer a little closer to you? Just, I think you're a little distant from the mic. That's maybe why I didn't.
Yeah, is that better?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, 100 to 150 a week. I have a person who does the packing and shipping for me. She's also my assistant in the studio to help me recycle clay, and I'm trying to teach her a little bit of production. So it's pretty busy. It's a lot. The kiln goes every day, either bisque or glaze. So it's pretty much, I unload it hot and load it back up before it's fully cool. And, just keep it going out.
That's great.
Yeah.
How about you, Peter?
Answer a question real quick.
Yeah.
Jump
Andrea,
in.
what I'll come into that. What one item do you ship the most of?
Oh, probably mugs.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, dinnerware is really popular when I have time to make it, but like right now I'm closed for dinnerware orders until the next year because a holiday season. So it'll just be mugs and bowls and those kind of one-off type things.
Mhm, mhm.
What about the production question for Peter there? How busy
Yeah,
are
well,
you?
yes, I'm more in the 3 to 4 week cycle in between firings with production. I don't nearly do the production that Andrea does, and I don't think I've thrown 300 pounds of clay in over 30 years per day. But yes, I do have a line of work, Adirondack Rockware, which I created my own original glaze recipes using crushed Adirondack rock dust, and I have the name Adirondack Rockware trademarked, and I have my own unique glazes. So I do have a line of functional work, and I also I'm always doing experiments, and I make abstract assemblages in clay, layering porcelain over stoneware and white clay over redware. So I do that work, but I'm always experimenting and trying to push my own boundaries again.
Mhm.
And in terms of my functional work, from the very beginning, even though I've made functional stuff, I've always made everything for me. I have tried to stay away from catering to what the general public may want, and I certainly have made my fair share of mugs over the years, and I continue to make my fair share of mugs. But the forms that I've defined, which I kind of consider my own style, I've always felt that everything you do, you really do for yourself. And if other people like it, and like I said earlier, when you're younger, they buy something that encourages you. So for me, it's always been personal. From the day that the first pottery class that I took changed my life, it's always been a personal thing. And it's nice to make money, and it's nice to get a big wall mural commission. But so that's where I stand on that.
I posted your link in the chat, Peter, the AdirondackRockware.com. And then you also is Shrope.org, is it? I think maybe.
That's kind of my general thing.
I'm putting that in there too.
On Shrope.org, there's some sculpture, there's some exhibit design that I've done. That's more of a general background. Yeah.
I think that's great. And I love the fact that we've got people here of different that bring different things to it. But the one thing you mentioned there about using Adirondack minerals was really interesting to me. And I was planning to ask you all, is there do you incorporate the Adirondacks in your work in one way or the other, or, so along those lines?
Yeah. Yes. So if I could just take the initiative and keep going with that.
Keep going.
When I first started out, I lived in New Hampshire, and I lived in a small town in southern New Hampshire that had 10 sawmills within about a 15-mile radius. And I was a poor, young, 20 some odd year old. And who could afford to buy propane to fire a kiln? So at the time, you could buy slab wood. A tractor trailer full of slab wood was $15.
Wow.
Now it's all turned into oriented strand board.
Mhm.
But anyway, so the first kiln I built was a 2-chambered wood burning kiln because I had a local resource for fuel. Years went by. I got my master's degree. I lived in Baltimore and I worked in a museum, and I had a little studio in the backyard, and I was planting trees in the backyard, and 12 inches under the topsoil was this big, huge seam of red clay. And it's actually technically called the Arundel Clay Formation, and it runs from New Jersey all the way to Washington. And that's why you see the red brick buildings in Philadelphia, red brick buildings in Baltimore, Wilmington, Delaware, because it's just a natural seam of red clay. So when I was living in Baltimore, it's like, shit, man, I can make pots out of this stuff. So I started digging clay out of my backyard, and my neighbors thought I was freaking crazy. And so I made, and it's what is called redware, which was typical to early American stuff. It's fired to what we consider bisque temperature, basically. And so I had a line of work outside of my full-time job that I called Baltimore Redware that I sold, so on and so forth. And now I'm up here, and there's not an abundance of, basically free firewood. There's not an abundance of clay that I can dig up out of my backyard. But shit, we live in the mountains and there's quarries nearby.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden it was like, well, what can I do that was like what I did before, but it's the Adirondacks? And so I went to one of the quarries there on the Bloomingdale Road, and I said, hey, can you, what are you doing with that stuff? Can you get me a chemical analysis of your stone dust? They said, sure. So a couple days later, the guy emailed me a PDF in the mail, and I read what the chemical analysis of it was. And that's when the light bulb went off. It was like, holy shit, I can make glazes out of this stuff. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's great. Adirondack, does the Adirondacks play into your work, Andrea?
Yeah, it does. I think that I am kind of looping back around to my background in painting, and I'm doing a lot more with surface decoration and kind of found images through maps. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ezra Schwartzberg and Green Goat maps, but I've been working with him and topography maps of the local mountains and everything, and putting them into screen printing that is then transferred onto the clay. And I don't have an example of the topography maps, but here's a different map. Let's see if I find my camera.
Mhm.
So I'm using it like found images
Nice. Yeah.
to add to the pottery, and then other images that are more classically kind of Adirondack like.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think that the natural area influences the work that I do.
That's cool.
So Andrea, just a question. Is the clay body black? Is that a stain, an oxide on there? Or
It's
is
a black glaze.
It's a black glaze. And so what's the white then? Is that a glaze also, or is that a?
So when you can actually see it up behind me. Again, if I can adjust, you see all those mugs that are white on the bottom?
Yeah.
So those I made today. It's white slip that goes on at the time when I throw the mug. I use a red stoneware as a base, and then I add the white slip on the lower portion that gives me a good kind of like blank canvas for adding the images.
And those go on, are you spraying through a stencil on those?
So the
Curious.
underglaze pigment is screen printed onto rice paper, just really thin paper. I have a screen printer do it for me. I don't do the screen printing. And then it goes on just like a temporary tattoo. So I just rub it on with a wet sponge and it transfers onto the clay.
That's cool.
Very cool.
Wow.
Mhm.
Greg, let me ask you too. I mean, Adirondack influences, is that
Oh,
kind of part of your work?
Yeah, I really have always liked salt glazed pottery. And I've always enjoyed I say the old fashioned, but the cobalt oxides on the salt glazes. And what I do, one of the things I do, I can bear with me like 2 seconds. Okay?
Yeah. This is the cool thing about Zoom. We couldn't do this if you were all in one location right now, unless we brought everything. And we did, Elaine posted Greg's site on the chat there too.
So what this is a clear glaze.
Mhm.
I don't know how well that's showing up. I can't tell, but
Yeah, it's good.
You can see it. Yep.
and it's cobalt carbonate oxide over the top of it. I dip it in my clear, and it really looks like, and it's a stoneware pot, but it really has a nice, almost like a salt glaze look to it, you know. And I really like that. I've always enjoyed it, and it's pretty labor intensive. I never get my time. You never get your time out of it when you do it, but I just enjoy doing it. And I've done dinnerware sets like this, and with lean-tos and canoers and guide boats and loons, and the typical. But one of the other things I've done in the past, I've made like a nice soup tureen, and instead of handles, I used real deer antlers for the handles, and I had tried to measure it out as best. And anyways, long story short, my wife said that was the ugliest thing I've ever made in my life. So I said, well, we'll put it on the shelf and see what happens. And it was on the shelf at this show, honestly, 20 minutes. And this guy kept coming back to it. He finally, and I really priced it out thinking nobody's ever going to buy it because I really liked it. I didn't care if I sold it or not. Well, he came in, I got to buy that pot. Sir, do you know what artist could make something like that? I said, well, I made it. He go, oh, I got to take your picture. Well, my wife was dying. She was in the back of the booth just crying. She was laughing so hard. So but I really enjoy using, like I said, when I can, antlers in my pots sometimes, a lot. I think just that natural form of an antler is really, I really like it. I think it's very pretty. I also really enjoy, I've done raku firing in the past with pine needles, and you can get some really nice effects with those too. But to answer your question, yes, the Adirondacks do figure in the movie.
Go ahead, Tina. Did you have a question?
Yes, since you've all been at this for years, some quantity of years, I wondered if there's any sound advice you would give young potters just
Don't do
starting
it.
out.
Don't do it. Is that what you said, Greg?
Yeah. No, you know what?
Doesn't sound like you had a choice.
Yeah, you don't. Once, like I said before, once the bug gets you, it gets you. It's a very rewarding career. It's a very physical career. I don't think you'll ever work harder, and you'll put a lot of hours in. But again, it's just the nature of the beast, Just be ready. It's when people see you at a show, oh, I can do that. Well, sure you can. Give it a shot. But once they see, you're setting up a craft show and you're setting up a gift shop every weekend someplace, it's a lot of work. But that's the nature of the beast. You meet a lot of nice people. You meet a lot of fellow potters along the way, and a lot of really talented people and all the different avenues. And that's one of the things I've always enjoyed about it. my wife and I are very blessed that we can go to Florida in the wintertime. And I've made contacts with a studio in Naples, so I can work down there if I want to, and which is nice. You know, my wife's, are you sure you want to do it? Well, why not? You know, I mean, I don't like being away from the play that long.
I don't think anything ever has made me question my choice in vocation as much as seeing the jewelers come in with their neat little cake. And I'm lugging in heavy breakable things and set up. It definitely it is a physical career, and I enjoy that part of it.
Mhm, mhm. My wife
It's
always
also-
wanted to know-
Yeah, go
One
ahead.
of one of the things that's always sort of blown me away a little bit about potters is kind of that, you know, they look in the kiln and it's like, oh, that broke. Oh well. And where I would be like, ah!
I always say
And-
sometimes it's Christmas and sometimes it's Halloween. When I,
Yeah, yeah. Well, the whole thing with looking in the kiln and saying something is broke is a poor excuse for not doing what you should be doing well. When something, even if a student makes it, when it gets to the point that it goes in the kiln, you can, even if something is thick and has air bubbles in it, you fire it for 20 hours, you extend your firing cycle. The worst thing is in the world is to have a student put their heart and effort into something and have it come out of the kiln and have it explode. That's the biggest discouragement. And yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to happen.
No.
There was a question in the chat from Kim about what's everyone's favorite glaze color or colors. Anybody want to take that?
I think I don't know whether it's just been my mood lately, but I just want to make everything black. Just matte black.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have a favorite color, but I do like what's called oil spot or hare's fur, HARE, like rabbit hare's fur or oil spot. And that's kind of a visual bubbly effect when you layer different glazes on top of each other. And so you get an interplay between one glaze and the other that you don't usually see.
I really enjoy, depending on what I'm, if I'm doing stuff, well, you said earlier, Peter, you do stuff for yourself, and you do. But if I have extra things that I want to kind of experiment with, the Potter's Choice glazes that Amico came out with, like oil spot, they have that one. You can really get some nice reduction looking pieces.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do it for production, I said to the gentleman that I deal with for my supplies out of Syracuse, and I've known him for years, I said, "Oh, I'm not going to sit there and put 2 coats of this and 3 coats of that. Let it all dry. We'll put another coat of this on. By the time I get done screwing around, I'm going to have an hour and a half glazing one mug." No,
Yeah.
you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I've really, and I've tweaked. I use Laguna's glazes a lot, and I use one of their blue glazes a lot, but I've tweaked it over the years to where what you see in the catalog is not what I get out of the kiln, you know, but I've kind of customized.
Yeah.
You know,
So what's the sort of bare minimum starting equipment if you were starting a pottery,
studio?
not career, yeah, a studio, a beginner's studio?
You know what I tell people all the time? I tell you, a few years ago, I had a grant through, basically through Governor Cuomo. Love him or hate him. You know,
Former.
Yeah, former Governor Cuomo. And I taught adult pottery here in Inland. I did 10 adults, and then during the day I did kids. And I told people that if you really want to try it and get your feet wet and get going with it, go take an adult course at a local art school, and then once you've done that, so now you're not going to shell out, I'm just saying $5,000 for equipment and then be stuck with it. Now you got to, you can get frustrated. You can kind of get the, make the mess, do what you got to do without dedicating space in your own house. And then, like I said earlier, when you get bit by the bug, I think you can set up a very nice studio for $5,000, and that's pretty cheap. Yeah. That's a pretty cheap hobby when all things considered.
I would agree with what Greg said, is that someone starting out should definitely find a place that has a studio set up where they can learn the craft before they make the investment in any equipment. And once they've kind of learned their skills, then they can think about starting up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we're lucky here that we have those opportunities in a lot of our North Country communities, right?
Yeah. But really the only thing you need is you don't necessarily need equipment. You need material, you need clay, and you can get oil-based clay, which is plasticine. Figurative sculptors use that a lot. You can get air-dried clay, and minimally you can do a pit fire in a campfire.
Yeah.
In an outdoor camping fire, you can pit fire stuff I've done it here last year a couple times. So you can pit fire just in a campfire fire. But yes, if you're gonna buy something, you need to commit. And I would say $5,000 is probably a reasonable starting point.
I was shocked this summer. I decided I was ready for a second kiln because of this constant firing of the one kiln, and I ordered one, and the lead time is 7 to 8 months. So what the kiln that I ordered in June, I will not see until December or January.
Wow. What kind of kiln did you order, Andrea?
Scott.
Another Scott?
Yeah, that happened to me last year, or two years ago. That happened to me 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
How much does a kiln cost for someone that doesn't really know?
The one that I ordered is about $1,500.
Okay.
Yeah. I had two Scuts for years, and I ended up replacing one of them because it finally, instead of messing around and replacing bricks for, like you said, $1,500. And I bought an L&L this time, and I've had that one. I'm looking at it right now I've had that one probably 6 years. It's just replacing element. You learn to be your own electrician, basically. Replacing elements, replacing thermocouples and things like that, and relays. And it's not that complicated. I mean, I think some people make it harder than it needs to be. But the thing I like about my L&L kilns, just to give a little technical thing, the Scud kilns, you have to push pins into the fire brick to hold the elements, and it's a pain in the ass. That's all I'm going to say. It really is. The L&L, there's a nice hard channel. The elements sit right in there. There's no pins to mess around with. And if I'd have known that 30 years ago when I bought this other Scud,
right. Yeah.
That being said, live and learn.
You can also set up a raku kiln and basically a fiber line trash can kind of thing with the propane and you can do that pretty inexpensively. Of course, it's not production pottery that you can drink out of, but it's still pretty cool.
But you can get some very nice effects with raku that you can't get with anything else.
Yeah.
You all mentioned earlier something that struck with me, and feel free to jump in if there's other things you mention too, but someone mentioned family support earlier. Like, how difficult would this be for all of you without the support of your families, whether it was maybe at the beginning or now, or it kind of dominates your lives in a lot of ways, it sounds like, right?
Yeah. I think I really have to thank my husband, Greg, different Greg, that he, he not only is my glaze chemist and kiln electrician, but puts up with the crazy hours that I work and helps me haul clay and do all sorts of things to support what I do. And also supported me for the, initial like 5 or 6 years when I barely made any money at it.
Yeah. It's good
I
to
mean,
have
I
a
would have
support
to
system.
say that, growing up, my mom's family, she had 5 sisters and they were all very, I will say, quote, artsy. One was a musician, one was a poet, one was an author. My mom and another one of her sisters were very, painterly, I'll say. So it almost felt natural for me to get into the arts. My dad, on the other hand, when I decided that I was going to be an art major, he said, "So you want to be an artist?" And I said, "Yeah." So he handed me a little white can of Rust-Oleum paint and a paintbrush, and he said, "Go over to my truck. I want you to paint the letters on the side of my tires for me." So that was my father's. But that being said, I mean, looking back on it, he was very proud of the career choice I took. I know that. So.
Yeah.
I think that I don't know if there's anyone who joined us who is interested in getting into this as a profession, or really any kind of self-employed business in the arts, I would recommend that they really learn their search engine optimization, which is, maybe not the most fun artsy thing, but it allows you to do what you love and not have to sacrifice making a good income at it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have social media skills and search engine skills, then you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed really, right? I mean, Peter, you didn't have to worry about that, right? Back in the day, search engine
Oh, no, wait, no,
optimization.
wait, yeah,
I mean,
no.
it's a different world right now for a lot of potters.
We still had dial tone telephone.
Party line.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think that Andrea makes a good point. I do have web pages. I don't pay too much attention with search at SEOs. But I am, if you Google either my name or Adirondack Rockware, I'm the only guy in the country that comes up.
Yeah.
But you still have to Google.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Andrea makes a very good point.
One of the things too, that if anybody listening or watching this, like you said earlier, wants to do this, any fine arts, as far as that goes, realize you're running a business. And not to sound greedy or petty, but your time is money.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to learn to organize your time. I mean, it's, people think, oh, well, you're a potter and they're kind of flighty and fly by. And to a certain extent, we are. It's because of the crazy hours we keep. I mean, that's just, again, the nature of the beast. But, you got to learn to organize your space, your time, your everything. And again, realize you're running a business.
Yeah, I've heard an old joke from a long time ago used to be a farmer works from sun up till sundown, but his potter's work is never done.
It's true.
Yeah, a friend of mine, like they took and weighed how much clay was used for each item that she production pot made, so that they could start out and they broke down firing costs, and they did
budget.
all of that so that they had that all figured out, so that they knew what the cost was for each item that they did. It's pretty amazing. Of course, her husband was a businessman, so that was the way he supported her, was by figuring that out for her. Sure, it was helpful.
One of the great analogies I've heard numerous times, like when I sit and demonstrate at a show, and people see me make, again, coffee mugs, because they're easy to make and they're easy to transport, because I don't worry about putting handles. I'll just make the bodies. And they'll see
Don't tell people they're easy.
Sorry, They're so hard. Most frustrating thing I ever make. But people see you can pound out, I'm just saying like 20 mugs in an hour, you know. But the bottom line, you're not paying me for that time. You're paying me for the time it took me to get to that point.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It took a lot, you know, it took a lot of time and a lot of practice, you know, before you could get.
Yeah.
If somebody wants a set of 4 mugs, I usually make 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just what you do. You know? So,
I
There was
thought what Greg said earlier about when you're away from it for a while and that it just kind of calls you back really resonated for me. And that for me, the forms that I make the most of, I make mostly with muscle memory. So, you know, I'll have a podcast or whatever. My mind is busy doing something else, but my hands just go to work. And it's almost like a mantra to just make that form again and again. And I don't find it tedious or repetitive. It just becomes really soothing.
That's great. Yeah, there's a certain probably stir craziness after a while that you've got to get back in the studio, right?
oh,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. What I find, I agree with Andrea about kind of getting into the groove, but what I find is maybe it's getting a little older, but I can work on the wheel for an hour. So I work on the wheel for an hour, I take a break, I stretch, I clean up, I wedge some more clay, and then I work for another hour. So the days of, you know, going from 8 till 10:30 are gone for me. I work for an hour, I take a break. I work for an hour, I take a break.
But probably that hour that you work, that time that you're working now, it took you how long to get to that point?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
again, what you created took 8 hours before, now only takes you an hour, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but it's easy.
this-
Everybody should do it.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all. This has been an amazing conversation. Great opportunity to hear not just your answers to all the questions we asked you, but to hear you all kind of interact with each other. I think is really awesome and I know helpful for people that will watch this or are watching it now going forward. Anything you want to add before we go to the audience out there or those that might watch this later, our guests?
Well, if you're ever in the metropolis of Inlet, stop in. I'm on the corner of Route 28 and Limekiln Lake Road.
Excellent.
Good
Yeah,
to see you, Peter. Nice to meet you, Greg.
Yes, I
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Good to see you guys. And for anybody else out there, if you have any problems with it, don't give up.
Yep.
Don't
Absolutely.
give up.
You'll get that aha experience.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Right.
everyone.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you,
Chris.
Peter. Thank you, Greg. Thank you,
Good
Andrea.
night.
Thank you,
Bye.
Tina and Elaine. Also want to thank the North Country Community College Foundation for sponsoring our program tonight. And if folks want to share this, we'll get it up on our website and our YouTube channel. Hopefully by tomorrow, we'll get it up there so we can spread the word. Again, thank you everybody for being with us tonight for North
Thanks.
Country Live. We'll be back next week with, we're doing a program on graphic arts, which is going to be pretty interesting. We'll have some folks that have turned their passion in the graphic arts into a career, which will be a good discussion as well. So
Right.
thank you again, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Chris.
Thank
everyone.
you.
We'll see you next time.